I worked as a junior marketing associate at a boutique agency near Pike Place Market. The hours were long, the pay was modest, but I liked the challenge. I had dreams, big ones, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was failing. My parents, Catherine and Gerald Monroe, lived in the suburbs of Bellevue, a 30-minute drive but a world away. We didn't speak often. Conversations were brief and practical. Weather updates, holiday logistics, the occasional reminder to call more often. Still, I sent them a check every few months to help with bills. It wasn't much, just a way of saying, I remember you. This year, I'd saved up $5,000. I had taken extra freelance gigs, worked late into the night, sacrificed weekends. I wasn't rich, but I wanted to show them I was doing okay, that I hadn't forgotten everything they gave up for me, or at least what I imagined they had given up. When the money cleared, I felt hopeful. Maybe this would mean something to them. Maybe they'd see me not just as a daughter, but as someone they could be proud of. I didn't expect applause, but perhaps a thank you, a call, something, anything. Instead, I got silence, until 2 days later, when my phone buzzed and my mother's name flashed across the screen. Hi, sweetheart, she said, her voice oddly light, like she was trying to sound cheerful and hadn't practiced in a while. Your dad and I were thinking, maybe we could take you out for dinner. For your birthday. Just us. A nice place downtown. 7 o'clock. I stood up too quickly, the chair screeching across the hardwood floor. I clutched the note to my chest, the sting of betrayal crashing through me like a wave. My mother had called me, invited me here, told me they wanted to celebrate. And now this? This wasn't a prank. This was intentional, calculated. They'd chosen this place, this night, this moment. My hands began to shake. I felt the room tilt slightly. The candlelight on the table flickered as if mocking me. I took a shaky breath and whispered the words aloud, just to make them real. Get out of our house, you jerk. Saying it out loud didn't help. It just made the pain more vivid, more cutting. I had given them $5,000. I had worked overtime, skipped vacations, pushed myself to exhaustion, just to say thank you, just to be seen. And this was their reply? I turned and walked out of the restaurant, numb to everything around me. The streetlights had come on. The city buzzed with life. Cars, people, music leaking from open patios. But I didn't hear any of it. My heels clicked against the sidewalk like they belonged to someone else. I was floating, or falling. I couldn't tell the difference. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I let the silence fill the space. I dropped the note onto the kitchen counter, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed on the couch in my dress. I lay there, still and hollow, as the hours passed. At some point, I started crying. Not softly, not gracefully. The voice in my head kept whispering, they don't love you. They never did. You were always alone. On the third night, Jenna came by. I didn't answer the door. She knocked, then banged, then shouted my name through the doorframe. I heard her leave eventually, only to return a few hours later with soup and a threat to call the building manager if I didn't respond soon. On the 5th day, I finally cracked the door open. She gasped the moment she saw me. Oh my God, Rachel, her voice broke. You look like hell. I didn't say anything. I stepped back and let her in. I felt like a ghost, floating through the apartment in the same pajamas I'd worn for days, hair tangled, eyes sunken. Jenna walked straight to the kitchen, found the envelope still sitting on the counter, and opened it. She stared at the message in stunned silence. They wrote this? She asked quietly. I nodded. Her expression shifted. First disbelief, then fury. She dropped the paper on the counter like it burned her fingers and pulled me into a hug. I didn't resist. I didn't cry. I just stood there in her arms, letting someone hold me for the first time in what felt like forever. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't even know what to say. Who does this to their own child? I couldn't answer that. I just leaned into her warmth, trying to soak up some of the strength she always carried like a second skin. Proof that I was still here, still breathing, still mine. I returned to work the following Monday. Mr. Gaines, my boss, pulled me aside the moment I stepped into the office. "You okay, Monroe?" he asked, keeping his voice low. I hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Family stuff." He studied my face for a moment, then patted my shoulder. "Take it easy. We've missed your fire around here." I forced a smile, walked to my desk, and dove into the backlog of emails and projects. It wasn't easy. My body was still heavy. My heart ached. But work gave me structure, deadlines, purpose. And more than that, it gave me back something I didn't know I'd lost: confidence. Over the next few weeks, I buried myself in tasks. I handled clients, rewrote campaigns, pitched new ideas. I worked late, came in early, not because I had something to prove to anyone else, but because I needed to feel useful to myself again. And somewhere in that blur of days and deadlines, a thought began to take root. What if I didn't just survive this? What if I used it? What if I built something that couldn't be taken from me? Something that wasn't tied to their name, their expectations, or their approval? The idea scared me, but it also thrilled me. I started sketching business plans late at night. At first, it was just scribbles on a legal pad: branding concepts, client outreach strategies, marketing philosophies I'd never had the freedom to implement at the agency. But then the scribbles became outlines. The outlines became spreadsheets. The spreadsheets became a full-fledged blueprint. I didn't tell anyone, not even Jenna. Not until one night, weeks later, when she came over with Thai food and found me surrounded by paper and open tabs on my laptop. "Okay," she said, plopping down beside me. "What is going on here? You look like a mad scientist." I hesitated, then handed her a mock logo I'd drafted. "Monroe and Company," it read. "Creative Marketing Solutions." She blinked. "You're starting your own firm?" I nodded. I think I'm ready." Jenna grinned, eyes lighting up with pride. "Hell yes, you are. And when you do, I want to be your first client, or investor, or emotional support human, whatever you need." Her faith in me did something my parents never managed to do. It made me believe in myself. In the weeks that followed, I kept my day job, but spent every spare moment preparing for the leap. I researched business licenses, funding options, project management platforms. I reached out to old contacts, former professors, anyone who might offer advice or mentorship. I even found a cheap co-working space near South Lake Union. Barely more than a closet with a desk, but it was mine. Finally, the day came. I handed in my resignation, hugged a few coworkers goodbye, and walked out of the agency for the last time. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I wasn't running away from the past anymore. I was building something toward the future. Monroe & Co. launched with one client, a small bakery run by a friend of Jenna's who needed help with social media campaigns. I threw myself into it like it was $1 million account. I designed graphics, wrote copy, scheduled posts, tracked analytics. I stayed up until 3 a.m., tweaking ad performance and A/B testing taglines. It was exhausting, uncertain, terrifying, and I loved every minute of it. That same month, I finally did something I dreamed of for years. I adopted a dog. He was a wiry mutt with floppy ears and a tongue too big for his mouth. The shelter staff called him Hopper because he bounced when excited. But I renamed him Dex, short for Dexter, because he reminded me of quiet loyalty, of the kind of love that didn't need words or conditions. When I brought him home, he sniffed every corner of the apartment, then curled up at my feet and let out a sigh so deep it made my eyes sting. "Welcome home," I whispered, stroking his fur. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full, warm, alive. The months that followed were a whirlwind. Monroe & Co. was still small, still fragile, but something about it felt unshakable because it was mine. Every client I signed, Every campaign I launched, every sleepless night and early morning, they weren't just steps in a career, they were bricks in the foundation of a new life. I poured everything I had into the work. My heartbreak, my anger, my pride, my hunger. Word of mouth spread faster than I expected. And people who don't deserve to come back without it. A year passed. We moved into a real office, still modest, but with a view of Lake Union and enough room for everyone to breathe. We rebranded, updated the website, invested in new gear. Our client list now included restaurants, wellness brands, and even a tech startup looking to pivot their image. Then a miracle happened. We landed a major contract with a national fashion brand. The campaign was risky, bold, heavy on storytelling. Exactly what I'd always wanted to do. We worked around the clock for weeks, rewriting scripts, editing reels, tweaking visuals until they were razor sharp. When the campaign launched, it exploded. The numbers exceeded every projection. The client sent us champagne and a handwritten note that read, "You didn't just market us, you gave us a voice." That night, I stood in my new kitchen, holding a glass of wine, Dex curled at my feet, Jenna laughing on the other end of the couch. The city glowed through the windows, all silver and fire, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I was chasing anything. I had arrived, not at some ultimate destination, but at a place where I no longer needed anyone else's permission to be whole. To celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Monroe and Company, I signed the lease on a new apartment, a penthouse loft downtown, with high ceilings, exposed brick, and windows that caught the sunrise in gold and threw it across the hardwood floors like confetti. It wasn't opulent. I wasn't buying yachts or designer shoes, but it was beautiful. It was mine. I had built this. Yes. There was a beat of silence, as if they didn't expect to hear my voice at all. Then my mother spoke, her voice trembling with a practiced kind of fragility. "Rachel, sweetheart, it's Mom. We really need to talk." My father's voice followed, low and hoarse. "Please, just let us come up. 5 minutes." I stared at their faces on the screen. They looked worn down, pale, as if the world had been less kind to them lately. My mother's lipstick was faded, her nails unpolished. My father looked older, his hair thinner, his coat hanging loosely off his shoulders like it didn't belong to him anymore. And yet, as I studied them, I felt nothing. No rage, no longing, no instinctive pull toward reconciliation. Just a cool, detached clarity. Anthony, who had paused by the island, waiting for my signal, asked again, "Do you want me to give you some privacy?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm not hiding from this." I pressed the speaker again. "What is it you want?" My mother looked up directly into the camera now, her expression flickering between nerves and desperation. We've run into some financial trouble. It's bad. The bank is threatening to take the house. We just need a little help. Something to get us through this season." I tilted my head. "And you came here, to me." My father stepped in. "We heard about your company, that it's doing well. The magazine feature, that fashion brand campaign. We know you've made it, and we're proud of you." Truly, the word proud felt like a slap. I couldn't remember the last time they'd said it. Maybe never. I took a breath. "You remember a year ago?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "The restaurant, the note." My mother winced. "Rachel, that was a misunderstanding." I cut in. "An accident? A joke?" She faltered. "We were upset. It was a bad week. You wrote, 'Get out of our house, you jerk,' and left it as a birthday gift." No response. Only silence. "You didn't call," I continued. "You didn't check if I made it home. You didn't even pretend to explain. You just vanished." My father cleared his throat. "We thought it was best to give you space." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Space? That wasn't space. That was exile. My mother's face twisted. either with regret or the frustration of not getting her way. Rachel, we're your parents. We raised you. We fed you. Gave you a roof. You owe us something. There it was, the truth uncloaked. My hands clenched at my sides. You raised me with silence and rules and shame. You made me believe love had to be earned through obedience. You made me believe I wasn't enough unless I served a purpose. That's not fair, she snapped. No, I said, leaning closer to the speaker. What wasn't fair was sending your only child a message like that and pretending it never happened. I spent years giving you access to my heart, hoping you'd fill it with something warm. But all you did was take. And now I'm choosing to stop the bleeding. My father's mouth opened, maybe to protest, maybe to beg, but I didn't give him the chance. I pressed the button, ended the call, powered off the intercom. Their faces vanished from the screen, replaced by my own faint reflection in the black glass. Behind me, the pasta continued to simmer. Dex settled at my feet, warm and constant. Anthony poured olive oil into a pan, unfazed by the storm that had passed. And me? I stood in the center of my kitchen, a quiet strength blooming inside my chest like fire and steel. I was no longer the daughter who waited to be chosen. I had chosen myself. That night I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even wonder if I had done the right thing. For once, there was no voice in my head second-guessing every word, every boundary. There was just quiet. When Jenna came by later, carrying a bottle of red wine and her favorite takeout dumplings, I told her everything. We sat on the terrace of my penthouse, the city glittering beneath us like a map of all the roads I had taken to get here. Dex dozed at our feet, ears twitching in sleep. Jenna didn't say much at first. She let me talk, let the silence stretch, let the wind carry my words into the night air. When I finally finished, she reached over and took my hand. I'm proud of you, she said softly. I smiled. A year ago, this would have destroyed me. She nodded. And now? I looked out at the skyline. Now I know my worth. And I know what I deserve. We sat like that for a while, sipping wine, saying nothing. I thought about that night in the restaurant, the crisp white tablecloth, the candlelight, the note scrawled in black marker. I thought about how I had stood there, frozen in my dress, waiting for someone to show me I mattered. If I could go back and speak to that version of myself, Rachel with the shaking hands and the broken heart, I would kneel beside her and whisper, hold on. It's going to hurt like hell. But one day, you're going to look back at this night and thank it. Because this is the night you stop begging to be loved by people who don't know how to love. This is the night you start becoming someone unstoppable. In the months that followed, I never reactivated the intercom system. I didn't check to see if my parents lingered downstairs or tried again. I blocked their numbers, deleted their emails, and removed their names from every emergency contact form in my life. Some people called it cruel. I called it clarity. They had made their choice, and now I had made mine. The world didn't stop turning. In fact, it sped up. Monroe & Co. continued to grow. We expanded to a team of 12, designers, strategists, content creators, data analysts. Our campaigns were featured in national magazines. I was invited to speak at marketing panels, startup conferences, even to mentor at a women's leadership retreat. Every time I stepped onto a stage, I felt that familiar flutter in my chest, the one that used to whisper, what if they're watching? What if they disapprove? But now I knew. It didn't matter. I wasn't speaking for them. I was speaking for the girl I used to be, for anyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough, for everyone who thought they needed permission to dream. At one conference, standing before a crowd of young entrepreneurs, I closed my keynote speech with a single line, one that had become my personal mantra. Sometimes rejection from the wrong people is the greatest gift life can offer, because it pushes you to become exactly who you were meant to be. The applause rang through the hall like thunder. But more than the noise, what moved me were the faces, some tearful, some determined, all of them holding their own stories behind their eyes. Stories of survival, stories of hope. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat by the window with Dex curled at my side. The city below pulsed with energy, but I felt still, rooted. Jenna texted, "You were incredible tonight." I smiled and replied, "We made it." Dex nudged my hand, and I whispered to him, "We're okay now, buddy. We're really okay." Sometimes I still feel a tug of sadness when I see daughters hugging their mothers in cafes. When I overhear someone say, "I called my dad for advice," there's a hollow part of me that aches for the parents I imagined I had, the ones who only ever existed in my hopes, not in reality. But that ache no longer controls me. It reminds me why I build, why I love deeply, why I nurture friendships, treat my team like family, and pour kindness into the world whenever I can. Because I know what it's like to be empty, and I know how powerful it is to fill yourself back up on your own terms. A few months ago, I found an envelope slipped under my office door. No name, just my name, scrawled on the front. It was a letter from my parents. Inside were 2 pages of carefully worded pleas. Talk of overdue bills, health concerns, a second mortgage. There was no apology, no mention of the restaurant, no acknowledgement of the damage they had done. Just requests, just expectations. I folded the letter, walked to the shredder, and fed it through without hesitation. When Jenna found out, she asked gently, "Don't you ever wonder if they'll change?" I thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe, but I'm not waiting around to find out." She nodded. "I support that." And I knew she meant it. Because here's the thing no one tells you. You don't owe anyone access to your healing just because they share your blood. You don't have to open the door again just because someone knocks louder this time. Especially not when they never apologized for breaking it down in the first place. I used to believe a child must always seek their parents' love, no matter what. Now I know better. Now I believe that love should be given freely, not bargained, not demanded, and definitely not manipulated. And most of all, I've learned that the love I give myself, that's the one that truly lasts.